This is the session on work ethic, the building blocks of the 21st century workforce. Our distinguished speaker today is Josh Davies, the CEO of the Center for Work Ethic Development. Josh has given more than 75 keynote presentations and workshops to education, workforce, and corporate events annually. He has been named by the Global Forum for Education and Learning as one of 2021's top 100 visionaries in education in recognition for his contributions to global education. Additionally, Training Magazine has named him as one of the top 10 trainers under 40 in America, and the Denver Business Journal has also named him one of Denver's 40 under 40. Josh is really passionate about helping others make a difference in their lives, their jobs, and their communities. Through his work as a speaker and as a trainer, he has engaged and encouraged professionals across North America, the Middle East, and Asia. And his speaking style has been called engaging. He's very good at connecting with audiences and combining relevant content. And so we are very eager to hear from him and learn from him. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you very much. It is truly a pleasure to be here. I know this has been a jam-packed 2 days already, and you're heading into the beginning of day 3. So I'm really excited to get a chance to help you launch the final day of this amazing event. So thank you all very much for your assistance in making this happen. I know there have been some questions about the polls. We'll do some things a little high-tech, a little low-tech, just to kind of make sure everything continues to move forward. So thank you for that fantastic introduction. Again, my name is Josh Davies. I'm the CEO of an organization called the Center for Work Ethic Development. We're not exactly a household name, but we are an organization that is committed to helping people reach their full potential. We know that when people get and keep employment, it makes a huge difference, especially in a field or area that they are passionate about. And that's why I'm excited to be here today. But what we really focus on is how to help people develop the skills they need, not just to get work, but to keep employment. But this has been changing because, as you know, the world has been turned upside down. So before we go into today's topic, I want to take you into a time machine. We're going to go back in time. So imagine with me this morning, you are stepping into this time machine. We're going back in time. We're going to swirl back in time. See if you can remember. See if you can think back to a magical time. It was January 1st, 2020. Oh, do you remember January 1st of 2020? New decade, new year, new opportunities, right? We had so many things in front of us. We were going to do everything. And then the virus hit, right? And then things shut down, right? Our entire world as we know it got upended. And that's not any different, really, than anyone anywhere, right? All of the things that we wanted to do changed. It impacted us in a lot of different ways, but one of the biggest ones is having to be socially distant, right? Having to create this space, closing down businesses, closing down schools, right? It shaped and changed the way we had to deal with things. And from our world, not only did it impact us in our ability to interact and teach and train people, but it also, of course, impacted the economy, and it impacted the jobs that were out there. Now, we've been having some growth in terms of employment lately, but the reality is we are still almost 10 million jobs short of where we were in February. People everywhere are having to come up with new jobs, new ways of working, new ways, well, let's just put it this way. It accelerated the trends that were already emerging. We saw technology coming and changing the nature of work. Entire industries and jobs are going to be going away. When you look at futurists, they estimate where the future is headed and which jobs are most likely to go away. If anything, all the pandemic has done is accelerated this trend, right? You look at the jobs that are most likely to go away. Telemarketers, number one. Hey, that's pretty awesome, right? No, it's not awesome because now we'll just have robots making those calls and they don't mind hearing no all the time. But look at some of these other ones, right? Technical writers, accountants, and auditors. We think that those are kind of high-skilled professions. The reality is the future is going to be changing work, not based on whether it's high skill or low skill, but on whether it's routine, whether or not you can add value. And the human skills that you need are going to be the ones that will be most in value. When we talk about what people need to get and keep employment, we don't just theoretically go off our top of our heads. We really base it on a lot of research. And so one of the studies we looked at is a very interesting one. It's from a group called Express Employment. Express Employment is a hiring and staffing agency. What they did is what's great. It's a longitudinal study. So that means they ask the same questions year after year after year to see where changes are. They asked 1,500 hiring managers for 4 years in a row, what were the most important criteria when hiring a new employee? They gave them a whole list to choose from, and they ranked them from 1 being most important all the way down to least important. They did this for 4 years in a row, 4 years. And what's interesting is for those 4 years, the answers widely sort of swung depending on what was important or unimportant for the year, except this: the number 1 most important skill or characteristic did not change. And interestingly enough, the one they ranked at the bottom also didn't change. The middle went everywhere else, but the top and the bottom didn't change. With that in mind, I'm not going to show you all the answers because it would take up the whole screen, but here are 6 of the answers that were on the poll every single year: attitude, education, specific skills, job experience, work ethic, and work history. One of those is what employers said for 4 years in a row was the single most important skill or attribute when hiring. One of them is also what they said was the least important. Now, this was one of the poll questions. These are a couple of the poll questions that I took here. And if you haven't already answered them, all right, do so now. And if you didn't get a chance to use the polls because you're on the mobile app or something else, if you want to use the chat feature, let's start with the least important, because I think that one's kind of interesting. Start with what you think out of these 6: attitude, education, specific skills, job experience, work ethic, and work history. Which one of these 6 do you think would employers say was the least important? And while we're doing that, whoever who's got access to the poll results, get ready. And as soon as people start putting in their answers, we will add the poll results there. All right. So what do we think is least important? We've got a lot of votes for work history, 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 question mark. Put specific skills, but now think job experience, work history, work history, work history, job experience, job experience. All right. So a lot of votes for work history and then job experience. What did the poll results show? Can somebody give us that?
Yes, it showed that 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't even know how to read the poll. Sorry. The least one with 27% that was chosen was specific skills.
Okay.
After that, it was work ethics, 25%. After that, it was education, 16%. Attitude, 15%. And work experience, 7%.
Okay. So specific skills was the number 1 answer that people, well, the number 1 answer that people thought was least important. And I hear that a lot, right? People are like, hey, I will teach you the specific skills of this job as long as you have, just kind of some basic knowledge. I hear that a lot. Job experience and work history, same way. I hear, hey, those things aren't as important as they used to be. What's interesting, though, is what employers have told us for 4 years in a row is the least important skill or characteristic they look for when making a hiring decision: education. That's right, education. Least important. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Why did they have this guy come and speak to us if he says that education isn't important? That's not what I'm going to tell you. Education is important, but it has now become a price of entry. It's no longer a differentiating factor. What employers are telling us is you have to have that in order to be considered, but where you got it, what your GPA is, those things aren't as important to me. Education is still, right, what you have to pay to get in, but it's no longer going to get you the job by itself. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So what then is the most important? All right. What of these remaining ones? Attitude, specific skills, job experience, work ethic, and work history. Which one of these do you think employers said was the most important skill or attribute when making a hiring decision? All right. Lots of people typing in their answers here. I know we've got some people who polled already too. We've got attitude, work ethic, attitude, specific skills, work ethic, attitude. What did the polls tell us?
Right. The poll said 30% of 50 individuals say attitude was the number 1.
Attitude's number 1 there.
Then,
all right. We have a lot of votes for attitude in here. And attitude is critically important. Mm-hmm. But what employers told us for 4 years in a row, the most important skill or attribute was work ethic. Now, before my attitude people who voted for attitude give me an attitude this morning, okay? Look, I'm not the one who's responsible for this, but here's what I'll tell you, is that attitude is a critical component of work ethic. That's what our research has found, and I'll get to that in a moment. But what employers said is when they are making a hiring decision, they see work ethic as the single most important attribute. Interesting. All right, so we know work ethic is the most important attribute for employers, but what about the future, right? Josh, you just got done telling us we don't know what what this future is going to be like. We don't know which careers are going to be around. We don't know what's going to be here, right? Well, let's talk the future. So let's see kind of what they say. All right, an article done in November of last year talked about the 7 soft skills that matter the most as we come out of the pandemic. Number 1 on that list, still work ethic, right? Work ethic is going to be a skill that's going to be increasingly important. And when you look at where work is headed overall, you look at the skills necessary, right? Technology skills are going to see the greatest increase, right? That education that we're getting, right? Those technical skills we're developing, those are going to see the biggest gains. The gains that are going away, the ones that are going the way the least, are physical and manual skills. But you notice the second most important thing there, social and emotional skills, your work ethic, right? We know that work ethic is the most important skill or attribute for employers today. We know it's going to be one of the most important ones in the future. So let's spend this morning talking more about this idea and this concept of work ethic. I already saw, based on the questions that people had already submitted about work ethic, there's a lot of questions about it. So let's spend our time this morning focusing on 3 things. Number 1, I want to help you get a better understanding of what work ethic is and what it isn't. I'm going to show you the importance of developing work ethic and the impact the gap has right now on employment and success. And throughout the morning, I want to help give you 5 strategies that you can use to help improve your work ethic, no matter whether or not today you think your work ethic is great or you think your work ethic needs some work. So with that in mind, let's get started with the basics of work ethic, a little work ethic 101, if you will. Let's start with the most important question when it comes to work ethic. What do you mean when you say work ethic, right? What is work ethic itself? Well, work ethic, we found, isn't one thing, right? I know this misnomer that it's just putting your nose to the grindstone and working hard and putting in lots of hours. And yes, attendance is an important component of it. But when employers were asked, it wasn't just about attendance. It's what you do when you're there, right? Are you ready to work? Do you follow instructions? Are you willing to learn and grow? Do you perform quality work? Do you have a positive can-do attitude, right? Do you get things done in time? So often we equate work ethic with just burnout. The reality is work ethic isn't one thing, and it's not simply about, burn your candle at both ends. The research has found it's a multiple variety of skills. In fact, what we did through our research and through the U.S. Department of Labor is we were able to hone it down to 7 specific skills. We then all alliterated them with the letter A. It is about A, having a positive attitude, right? A lot of you said this was one of the most critical things, right? People need to have that positive attitude. Secondly, you need to have good attendance, be on time every time. You need to have good appearance, not just in what you wear, but how you hold yourself, the language that you use, how you communicate with people, right? You have to have ambition to do more than the minimum, right? You can't just be doing with bare minimum to get by. You have to have acceptance of other people, of the rules. You have to have appreciation of the people you work with and for. And most importantly, at the end, you have to have the accountability to do what you say you're going to do every single day. These 7 skills, these 7 A's, are a great reminder of what you need to do in order to deliver that work ethic that employers are talking about. It's not just about the hours you put in. It's about all of these things. That's what they say is important. A great way to remember it, as we say, is that you just need to bring your A game every day. That's right. Just bring each one of those A's every single day. So that's important. But here's my question. You kids these days, you just don't have work ethic like we did, right? I'm sure you hear that all the time, right? People talk all the time about how young people are so different these days and all these different things, right? You point out all these news articles, right? This me generation, right? Lazy, entitled narcissists who still live with their parents, right? All these awful things about these young people these days. And what's interesting is, yes, there's a lot of articles written about young people. But what's interesting is when you start to get beyond the headlines and you start to really drill down into the data, what the data tell us is a slightly different picture. Now, don't get me wrong. There's lots of articles about young people, right? That they're privileged, they're narcissistic, they're entitled, they're spoiled. That's what they'll say. But what's interesting is that's the only constant, because what we find is that this is written all the time. And what I mean by that, this is actually not from a recent article. This is from Life magazine in 1968. Talking about the young people then. We now call them baby boomers. At the time, they called them hippies. right? They had the same things they said about baby boomers that they say about young people today. In fact, you read stuff that's out there, right? That they love luxury, show disrespect for elders, right? They contradict their parents. They tyrannize their teachers, right? These children are tyrants. Now, obviously, this isn't written in modern times because you can tell just some of the language is a little different. But how old is this? How old is this idea that young people are stupid and they don't know what they're doing and they're going to destroy the world? Well, let's ask Socrates, because that's a quote from him. The reality is we look at young people all the time as being, these ones who are going to tyrannize the world. They're so different than everyone else. The reality is young people are young people. We just don't know what we don't know. But young people don't suffer from a lack of work ethic. Right? One of the things that we did is we looked at studies. In fact, the Journal of Business and Psychology did a meta study, a study of studies. They took 77 different polls, averaged them out when it came to work ethic, and here's what they found. There was no statistically significant difference in the work ethic of any one of the three main generations at work: baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. Now, of course, young people, like many of you, aren't even part of this millennial generation. We're part of this next generation that's coming in, Generation Z, right? When we talk about millennials are almost 40 right now and go down into their early 20s. So if you're 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, right, we're all part of Generation Z, this next generation that's coming up. Here's what's funny about how quickly these attitudes change. There are now enough Gen Zs in the workplace for millennials to form an opinion about these new younger workers. Interestingly enough, a poll came out last year asking millennials their opinion about these younger workers. What was the number one word that millennials used to describe Gen Z? Lazy. That's right. That's how quickly these attitudes get formed, right? Before you even barely get a chance to get into the workplace, you're already being called lazy by the generation that everyone else called lazy. Yeah, the reality is work ethic is not something that is about your age. Work ethic is a skill that you learn. If anything, we found that the challenges with work ethic in America are societal, not generational. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's just a set of skills that you can learn and develop. So speaking of which, can you learn work ethic? Can you teach work ethic? Is work ethic something you can develop beyond, I don't know, when you're 4 or 5? Here's what the good news is. The research says yes. Yes, you can develop these skills. But here's the thing. You can't do it in a way that oftentimes people try to do work ethic. We try and teach people work ethic by pointing fingers at them and telling them what not to do, right? That's not an effective approach, right? We'll penalize, right? Put your phone down, right? Pull up those pants. That shirt's not work appropriate, right? You better be on time tomorrow or you're going to get fired, right? Those things only work as long as someone's there penalizing and pointing at you. The reality is work ethic and the skills of work ethic get best developed when you develop intrinsic motivation. So here is my advice. Here's step number 1 for you. When you want to develop work ethic, keep this in mind. I want you to focus on something called WIIFM, WIFM. Okay, it's not a new term. It's not a radio station. WIIFM stands for what's in it for me. Why should you care? That's really the important question. When it comes to work ethic, what you have to figure out is why these skills are important to you. Not why they're important to your mom, your boss, your teacher, your professor. No, you need to understand why you should care. Because when you care, that's when things change. All right? It's not a question of your head, it's a question of your heart. And that's what WIFM is all about. It's about becoming emotionally invested, that intrinsic motivation. Because when you care, when it matters to you, that's when you start to subtly shift your behaviors. That's when these skills become a part of your day-to-day life. Focus on why it's important to you, not why it's important to other people. That is your very first strategy in creating work ethic. But the question then remains, how did we even get here? How do we get to the point where we have to talk about work ethic? When you look at those 7 A's, they seem like things that are common sense. But the problem is they're not common practice. And that's not our fault. It's not one person's fault. Again, we talk about societally. There are things that have been eroding across our society over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years that have led to these problems. Let's go analyze them quickly, right? The 4 pillars of work ethic, the 4 places we traditionally develop work ethic are pretty standard no matter where you were in the world. Number 1, your family. Almost everybody think about your family, right? The environment you grew up in, right? All right, so let's just be honest. This picture was obviously not taken at anyone's real table because no one's table looks that nice. But let me ask you this question. How much time do parents, you think on average, spend really engaging in conversation with their kids? How much time do you think they spend in meaningful dialogue on a weekly basis? Think about that in your head. And let's use the chat window again. How many hours a week do you think a typical parent spends in meaningful dialogue? Not like, where are you? Where's your sister? Have you done your homework yet? But meaningful dialogue. How many hours per week do you think a typical parent spends in meaningful dialogue? All right. Lots of quick answers coming in here. Not a lot. And mine does an hour, probably 2 hours, 1, 2, 3. Not a whole lot of positive answers here. Less than 2, 1 hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes is 0. Wow. 10 hours. Wow. Yeah, a few of you. Yeah. That the correct answer. A few of you had it, right? It's 15, but it's 15 minutes a week, not a day. 15 minutes a week on average that the typical parent spends in meaningful dialogue with their kids. Wow, that's staggering. Only that it feels like it's not a lot of time. Now, what's interesting is we don't know whether or not this has gone up or down, and social scientists have not found that this has an impact on the development of your skills. However, the University of Minnesota did a 25-year research project where they analyzed what happened in childhoods that had the greatest impact on people's success later in life. Was it education, parents' income, zip code? None of those things they found was the most important factor. The number one thing they found that was the best indicator of whether or not a person would be successful later in life was whether or not they did regular chores growing up at home. Yeah, interestingly enough, the typical parent then was asked, did you have to do regular chores growing up? Parents, 82% of them said, yes, I had to do regular chores growing up. Those same parents were then asked, do you make your children today do regular chores around the house? Only 28% said yes. That's a staggering shift in a single generation, only 28%. And again, what the study found was that it was the best indicator of future interpersonal and professional success was doing regular chores. And for those of you who don't want to read the whole 300-page report, 2 important findings I found. Number 1, the earlier children do regular chores, the bigger the impact. Second of all, it didn't matter how difficult the chore was, only that it had to be done regularly and there was a penalty for not doing it. Interesting. Okay. So we know that parents are doing less chores at home. Parents are having their children do fewer chores. They're not developing these skills. So where then do you develop these skills? Well, the second place, if it's not happening at home, is in the schools, right? Because when we think about education today and across America, what is it all about? It's about preparing people for the careers of the future. No, it's not. It's about testing, right? We know that. You know that better than I do, right? Like it or not, we live in an era where high stakes testing dominates the reality of our educational system. It determines whether or not schools stay open, whether or not principals get promoted, whether or not teachers get raises, right? Everything has to do about the scores at the tests. In fact, the average student now takes almost 100 high stakes tests before you graduate. Your sophomore year in high school is your high point at about 10 and a half on average. In preschool, preschoolers are taking an average of just a little over 4 tests per day, right? This is what's very interesting because we're seeing more and more emphasis around testing, but yet at the same time, schools are oftentimes forced to operate with thinner budgets. Why? Because when you look at school spending, post-Great Recession, we saw their schools got decimated. And what's interesting is the majority of states in America still have not gotten their education budgets back up to where they were in 2008. Over the last 10 years, they haven't been able to get back there, led by Alaska, Wyoming, and Oklahoma, all with over a 20% decline. Only one state has had a significant increase in the number and the amount of spending, and that is North Dakota. And all 8 of those kids are getting a phenomenal education. I'm going to tell you. Actually, no, I take that back. There are far more than 8 kids in North Dakota. I don't want you to say that. And if anyone is here from North Dakota, you know there are far more than 8 kids. The reality is the reason why North Dakota's budget has increased over the last 10 years is the discovery of oil and gas in Western North Dakota, which has totally reshaped the economy of that state. They've got more money, but most of us are operating with the same or less than we did 10 years ago. And yet there's an increased emphasis on testing, which means something has to give. So what types of classes are being offered less and less in American high schools? Well, it's not science, thank goodness, right? It's not math. It's not any of the things that are on the test. What does get cut, though? CTE, career and technical education courses. Regardless of whether or not this is family and consumer science, marketing, DECA, auto shop, these are the hands-on work-based learning classes where regardless of whether or not you're going into that career field or not, you learn these work-based skills. You learn work ethic in those classes. And unfortunately, students are being exposed to them less and less. So we're not having the skill development at home. We're not having the skill development in school. So where then do you develop these skills? Well, for many of us, it was working. So let me ask you this question. And I don't have this on a poll, but I'm just very curious out there. Just again, using the chat window, if you have had a job before you were 19, and if you are under 19, just if you've had a job already, either put yes or no. Have you had a job where you got a paycheck, not like a babysitting job or you're cutting grass or a lemonade stand I saw. Do you have a job where you got a paycheck? Tell me yes or no. Yes or no. I'm just going to get a sense here. Okay, there's a lot of yeses. All right. A lot of yeses, some no's. Not regularly, yes, yes, yes. Okay, so a lot of you have worked. Okay, good. Awesome. A lot of people had jobs before they were 19. That's really positive. Here's the problem. You're not the norm, right? When you look at it, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, analyzed youth employment in America since 1948. On average, about 50 to 60% of young people, 16 to 19, are engaged in the labor market. That is, they had some sort of job during that time period. About 50 to 60%. That's on average. That declined with the Great Recession, and now we're only at about 30 to 35%. The scary part is the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that by 2024, this will be down to 25%, even less than it is today. Only 1 out of every 4 young people, 16 to 19, will have had a job. Summer employment, a place where many of you maybe had jobs outside of the school year, right? That hit its peak in the late 1970s, around 75%. Now it is less than 45%. And again, we talk about the impact the pandemic has had this past year. You look at youth unemployment numbers over the summer, they skyrocketed, in particular for communities and people of color. We know this is going to have long-term impacts because people couldn't find work, they didn't get that job experience, and they're not developing these skills. Because like it or not, whether or not you go into that career of your first job, you learn those workplace skills when you are working. Things like having to show up every day, getting along with your boss, even if you don't like them, right? Having to deal with rude coworkers and customers, right? All those things are skills that you develop that you need later in life. And if we're not getting it at home, we're not getting it at school, we're not getting it at work, who then has to develop them? Pop culture and mass media. How's that working out for us, right? Have you guys seen this billboard around any of your towns lately? Probably not. Why? Because people stopped paying for these billboards years ago. Now, what do we see? Ads for TV. It's about get rich quick, right? It's about pills that'll solve every problem. What's the most popular TV show on TV today? Yeah, reality TV. What type of skills do you need to have to be the next bachelor or bachelorette, right? You have to look good and create drama, right? Those are 2 skills that no employer is actually hiring for. No one's like, we need someone here to create drama. No, nobody wants that. In fact, when you look at TV today, it's as if work is almost seen as a stigma rather than something to be celebrated, right? The reality is that we don't see work as something that's valuable. I saw this sign the other day. I think it probably perfectly sums up so many people's opinions about work in America. Simply put, it's about giving 100%. We just divvy it up throughout the week. As you'll notice, Saturday isn't even on here. So I really applaud all of you who are all still on this here at the conference today. The reality is work ethic and the lack of work ethic isn't a generational problem. It's a societal one because we've been creating a disincentive for work and work-related skills for the last 3-4 decades. And we're starting to see the impacts today, and it's everywhere. The impact of this work ethic gap is seen in a lot of different places. The first place that it's seen more than anywhere else, not too surprisingly, is in education. When you look at students, and this is a study that probably you're like, duh, but this is a study that asked students, right, based on their work ethic scores, if you were in the top quartile, measure their academic progress. Students who are in the top quartile for work ethic, these non-cognitive skills, had nearly a 100% high school graduation rate, had a post-secondary graduation rate nearly 3 times the lowest quartile. Duh. People with more work ethic graduate at higher rates. We know that. But more importantly, this lack of work ethic is undermining people's ability to get employment, because what employers are telling us is that no matter whether or not you're coming out of high school, college, graduate school, you just don't have the right skills. Only 1 out of 3 feel that students are adequately prepared for work. And that's a number that has not changed over the last 7 years. More and more employers are just saying that regardless, we're not teaching people about the realities of work. They may have book smarts, they may have all the technical skills, but they don't have the work ethic to help them out, right? When you look at the skills gap that exists in America, and people talk about the skills gap, it's not about computer skills. It's not about technical skills. Yes, those are missing sometimes, but the overwhelming skills that are missing are a lack of soft skills. That's what employers want, right? Just basic skills. In fact, more and more hiring managers now are finding that soft skills are as important, if not more important, in the hiring process. In fact, 93% of hiring managers say it is more important to hire somebody with soft skills that are at least equal or better than their technical skills. Only 7% of hiring managers right now say that they'll hire somebody who has bad soft skills. 7%. Now, those 7%, I'm not saying that those managers are stupid. All I'm telling you is this: 7% of Americans also believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. Okay, spoiler alert, it does not, right? But we know this: soft skills are being seen more and more as equal, if not more important than your technical skills, right? Again, education is your price of entry. It's no longer a differentiator. In fact, when you look at bad hires are typically almost always a result of someone not having the right soft skills. That's what managers say in retrospect. It's not that they didn't have the technical skills to do their job. And more job postings are listing soft skills as the critical skills that employers are looking for. When you look at how this breaks down based on educational level, even job ads require a master's degree, 92% of those jobs are saying that soft skills are equal or more important in the hiring process. That's significant. So what becomes of that? Well, we have to obviously develop those skills, but then we also have to be able to demonstrate them. What do I mean by this? We have to be able to get into an interview and show off our soft skills. And this is a really important part for you, right? When employers were asked, how important is it for a candidate to demonstrate soft skills in a job interview? 93% said it was very important. We then asked job seekers, how important do you think it is for you to demonstrate work ethic in an interview process? Only 16% said it was very important. Why? Because we put so much emphasis around our resume and what's on our resume, right? Like what clubs we were in, what our GPA was, what our degree was in, instead of talking about what we learned and the skills that we demonstrate as a result of that. Why being the president of that chapter helped you develop the leadership skills or the communication skills that you're looking for. How you can demonstrate your work ethic is got to be critical in the interview process. And this is really going to be, I think, strategy number 2 for you. You have to stop being soft around these skills. So oftentimes we talk about soft skills. And the problem is, the reason why I believe that people call them soft, it's not because they're easy. It's because they don't know how to define them. And they don't do a very good job, right? We say things to people like, I need you to have a better attitude. Well, like, what the heck does that mean, right? What do you mean have a better attitude? Well, how do we define attitude? How do you know I have it or don't have it? That's the key. We've got to critically make sure that we are as specific about the definitions of those skills as we are around our technical skills, right? We're not going to be like coding. Oh, well, just code however you want to, right? There's specific things, right? We know what those skills demand, right? So when it comes to attitude, we don't say just have a better attitude. We say this: attitude is about staying positive in every situation. Take control of the way you react. How do I know you don't have a good attitude this morning, Josh? I know you don't have a good attitude because you're letting something that happened last night still impact your emotions today. You're letting it control you. You're not controlling it, right? That's what it's about. Because when we clearly define what these skills are, we can then develop them just like every other technical skill that we're already working on. And that's when we can demonstrate them. And that's the key. But if we don't clearly define the skills up front, we are never going to be able to develop them and demonstrate them for our employers. And we're never going to be able to demonstrate them for our own success. So stop being soft, clearly define these. And we can help you because we have definitions for each of our 7 skills. But however you look at soft skills, stop being soft around them. Clearly define what those outcomes are. Because at the end of the day, your soft skills will be as important, if not more important, to your overall job success. Right? Harvard University did a research project 100 years ago. Stanford recently recreated it, found it had not changed. 85% of people's success in this world comes from their soft skills and their people skills, regardless of what profession they're in. More and more STEM and IT careers are finding that oftentimes the soft skills that were overlooked are the differentiators between people who are successful and unsuccessful, right? Some said that blue 15% of the top isn't important. It is. I think the pyramid is probably a bad way of looking at this. I think the best way to look at it is to look at this, is to see the growth of these skills and how they all work in tandem with each other. Harvard Business Review had a real curious piece that said this, right? Jobs involving a lot of math, but less social interaction has shrunk over the past 3 decades. It's still good to have great math skills, but now without your social skills, it's not going to help you, right? You need it more like a link, right? And think of technical skills, academic, and soft skills as all being together. You need to have all 3 of these circles in order to be successful in your world. The problem is this: if you don't have all of them, you won't be complete, right? If you just have technical skills and academic skills, what do you have? Potential, right? That's all you're going to have. You have a lot of people who have a lot of potential. What happens if you have academic skills and soft skills, but you don't have the technical skills to do a job? What happens then? You're a nice person, right? Oh, we like them, but that's about it. Well, what if you don't have the academic skills, but you're technically smart and you've got soft skills? What happens then? You're the bull, you're charging. You'll try and get everything done, but you'll trample people and you'll waste resources. If you truly want to be successful, you have to have academic skills, technical skills, and soft skills together. These 3 create career readiness. That's what you need. It's not one or the other. It's not an either or. It's an and. And we need to focus on those 3 together. And that's why soft skills are so important for you. That's why work ethic, specifically within those soft skills, are the foundational skills that will set you up for success. So with that in mind, let's now talk about the rest of the strategies that you can use to develop your own work ethic. We're going to start with number 1, the idea of awareness. And this is one of the big problems, because oftentimes the biggest challenge with work ethic is that we don't know what we don't know. All right, so one of the poll questions I asked you was, how does your work ethic compare, you think, to the other attendees at this conference, right? You've gotten a chance to see and work with them over the last several days, you've heard their questions, got a chance to interact. So you got one of 3 choices. You can put yourself in the top 25% of your group, the middle 50%, or the bottom 25%. Let's see where our work ethic compares to everybody else. So again, if you didn't get a chance to put in the poll, put in where you think your work ethic is compared to everyone else in this group here. Are you in the top 25% of the people who are in this conference? Are you in the middle 50%, or are you in the bottom 25%? Just type in where you think you are in this group, and then we will also get our poll results.
Yes, so the poll results, 57% mentioned they were in the top 25% of the group.
So 57% think they're in the top 25%. All right, so LD, math was not necessarily my strongest subject. Is it possible that 57% of people could be in the top 25%?
Yeah, no.
No. You're like, oh, that's a good point, right? And if we look at the responses from just the people who typed in here, almost all of you thought you were in the top or the middle. Bottom 25%, what percentage thought they were in the bottom 25%?
Only 2%.
22%, not bad. There's more awareness than normal.
2%, 2.
Oh, 2%. Oh, sorry. That's much more accurate. So only 2% of you thought you were in the bottom 25%, and 57% thought you were in the top 25%. Needless to say, this is not possible. But the problem is this. The problem is that we look at our work ethic and we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't have a good sense of how to compare it because we're only looking at ourselves. Here, for instance, is a poll with 6,000 younger millennial workers, asking them their opinion of themselves at work. Do they think they're people savvy, tech savvy, loyal, fun loving, and hardworking? The number 1 response that young people said is that they were hardworking. 86% said, yes, I'm a hard worker. 82% said they were loyal. Only 14% said they were fun loving people at work, which is great. That's their perception. But we then asked these same 6,000 younger workers' bosses their opinion about those same workers. You can see there's a little bit of a disconnect, right? Hardworking went from 86% to 11. My favorite, loyal to your employer went from 82 to 1%, right? Here's the problem. We are terrible judges of our own work ethic because we don't have basic awareness, right? We're like this cat looking in the mirror, right? We have a completely different perception of ourselves than others do. Why? Simple as this. We judge our own work ethic based on our intentions, and other people judge it based on our actions. And we base our work ethic on what our perception is, what we think we know. And so we think we're pretty good. It's called the Kroening-Dunner effect, right? What happens? It's a very simple continuum, right? Based on your knowledge in the field, if you have very, very low knowledge, You amazingly have very high confidence, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? You're like, yeah, I'm really good at this. I sometimes call this the karaoke effect, right? You sing in the car, you sing in the shower, right? You think you're pretty good. You get up on stage, you realize you are terrible, right? But you didn't know that because your confidence was high because you had very little knowledge. The funny part is the more knowledge you get, you don't instantly become more confident. In fact, the more knowledge you get, you become less confident because you realize things are more difficult than they are. But then eventually, as you get more and more knowledge, you get more and more comfort, and eventually you get to a point where your confidence and your knowledge are equal. That's the problem. We have to get to that far point. For many of us, our work ethic right now is really low because our knowledge is low, but our confidence is high. Right? That's why so many of us think we're in the top 25%, and so few of us think we're in the bottom 25%, because we just don't know what we don't know. We have to create more awareness. We have to find ways that other people can help us better understand, and we have to ourselves clearly understand what the definitions of each of these skills are so that we can do a better job then of developing them and demonstrating them. That's really the key. Right? We have to create our own awareness. But if you don't believe me, that's fine. Let me put it in the words of famous American poet. And I believe there are very smart people in this world in all sorts of different fields. I don't know if any of you are big fans of poetry, but one of my favorite American poets wrote this. He said, when a gentleman by the name of Ice Cube, he says this: "You had better checkity check yourself before you wreckity wreck yourself." Oh, truer words have not been spoken, Mr. Q. Amen. All right, so let's get on. If that was to number 3, let's go to number 4. What is strategy number 4 about developing your work ethic skills? Make connections. What do we have to do? We have to make connections with our skills. We can't think of soft skills as being in a vacuum. We can't think of them as being alone. We need to figure out how soft skills integrate with our technical skills, with our academic skills. We need to get all of them working together. But the problem is we live in a world right now where we're trying to find differences. We're not looking for similarities. We're always trying to figure out how something is different, differentiate this, differentiate that. Instead, we need to use our heads to try and figure out how things link together, how we can make these skills fit into our academic world and then into our work world when we go from there. Because we know that soft skills will separate the successful from the unsuccessful in every single STEM career. So with that in mind, how do we get them to work together? Well, it's a mindset shift. Let's take it for example. I'm going to give you one. We'll do this as a group, okay? Well, let's do this as an exercise as a group together. All right. So let's take a look at 3 very different groups of people. Group number 1. All right. Bank robbers. Okay. So bank robbers are bad people stealing money. Okay. So those are bank robbers. Okay. That's one group of people. A second group of people: ministers, preachers. Okay, and as a son of a preacher myself, I know preachers are a very different breed of person. All right, so we've got preachers, we've got bank robbers, and then we've got a DJ like at a wedding or something like that, just looking to have fun. Completely different from the other two, right? So we've got a DJ, we've got preachers, we've got bank robbers. Okay, all 3 different types of people, very different. But do they have things in common? Can we make connections? Can we find connections between them? Well, let's look at this. What does a bank robber and a preacher have in common? Well, they both want your money, right? A preacher wants to do it in order to make things good happen, right? The bank robber only wants to do bad things with it, but they still both want money. Okay, so that's one thing they have in common. What about the bank robber and a DJ? All right, bank robbers and DJs, very different, right? One's stealing money, one's trying to get everyone to have fun. What do they want? Well, they both want everybody to go to the same place. They both want to get everybody on the floor, right? The DJ wants to get everybody on the dance floor. The bank robber wants to get everybody literally on the floor, but that's what they want. Okay. What about a DJ and a preacher? What do they have in common? Bank robber and a preacher are both looking to get feedback from the other people who are with them. They'd like to get some sort of an amen. They want to know, are you with me? Right? What about a DJ, a preacher, and a bank robber? What do all 3 of them have in common? Bank robber, preacher, DJ. What do they all want? What? I got it. All 3 of them want them to put our hands in the air. Yeah, right? Again, for some completely different reasons. Right? So we can look at these 3 groups and we can say they're completely different. There's nothing those 3 have in common. Or we can look at the 3 and say bank robbers, DJs, and preachers collectively and individually do have more in common than we think. It just requires a mindset shift. We have to look at things differently. And that's what's important. Because the more context these skills have, the easier is it for you to figure out the what's in it for me. When you can apply these 7 A's into your academic world, into your technical world, so that you can see how they can fit with you. That's when they become not something that's different, but something that's integrated, something that is connected. And that's going to help you be more successful, because then it becomes just part of what you do, nothing separate from your daily academic and technical work. All right, how about our final strategy for developing work ethic? It's this: it's using the 1% approach. What do I mean by the 1% approach? It's relatively simple. So I know most of you can't see me, but I'm an active guy. I'm a runner. I used to run marathons. I had the pleasure of getting a chance to run a couple of marathons, including the Boston Marathon. It's an amazing experience, but I will tell you this: it is not for the faint-hearted. All right, a marathon is 26.2 miles. An average marathoner takes 4 hours plus in order to finish of straight running. You train for it for 12 to 16 weeks. It's crazy. Right? If I were to ask those of you out there who are not runners, how many of you want to train for 16 straight weeks and run a 26-mile race? I don't think I'd get many takers, because that's crazy, right? That's stupid. Who does things like that? I don't know, by the way. Marathoners, we are crazy. We are stupid, but it's just a unique experience. But what if I made it? What if I changed it? What if I said, instead of training for 16 weeks to run a 26-mile race, I said, hey, let's train for a few weeks and let's do a 1-mile fun run. Right? Would that require hours upon hours of training? No. Maybe we jog a little bit, maybe we walk a little bit, just kind of get ourselves ready, and I could probably do a mile. What's the difference between running a marathon and a 1-mile fun run? What's the difference between training for a marathon and a 1-mile fun run? One of them seems achievable. The other one seems ridiculous. One of them is something I could see myself doing. And in the same way, if you look, once you create that awareness, right? One of the biggest problems is you realize sometimes that the gap between where we are and where we want to be is so large, it feels like I shouldn't even get started. I can't even fathom getting over to this completion part. Instead of thinking about things in grandiose terms, instead of trying to be superhuman tomorrow and be like the best person you could possibly be, how about this? Can you be 1% better tomorrow than you are today? Small incremental changes. Could you be 1% better when it came to being on time? Could you show 1% more appreciation? Like, sure, I could do that, right? That's pretty easy. Could we do 1%? And here's the thing, it adds up quickly. If you are 1% better every day for 40 days, at the end of 40 days, how much better are you? Again, I'm not very good at math, so I'm like 40 days, 1%. It's pretty easy, right? 40%. But no, it's not, right? Because you take the power of compound interest, right? That 1% of the 1% of the 1%, you're actually, at the end of 40 days, 120% better at a skill, because it all adds up, right? 1% change every day makes a difference in a hurry. And sometimes even a 1% change in and of itself can make a huge difference. What do I mean by that? Let's take a sentence, right? Just a basic sentence, right? I love cooking, my children, and animals, right? What's the difference between the sentence? What if you put these commas? What if you put the commas in between cooking, my children, and animals? What happens then? You got a very normal, well-adjusted person who loves cooking, children, animals. 3 different things. Without the commas, what do you have? A cold-blooded sociopathic killer that's eating their own family, right? The difference of those commas in there is everything, right? We know that this is true. Little 1% changes in and of themselves can even make big differences. 1%. That's all it takes. So we talked about 5 strategies that you can use to better develop your work ethic. First of all, it's focusing on what's in it for me, right? Why it should matter to you. Second of all, stop being soft and just define these skills the same way we do all of our academic and technical skills. Third, build that awareness, because the problem is right now we don't know what we don't know. And when we don't know, we're overly confident and we don't do a very good job, because we need to have more awareness. Fourth, make those connections. Find ways to build these skills in context with your other skills. And number 5, use that 1% approach. Get slightly better every single day. Now, if you'd like to get some more information, if you'd like to get some more resources around this, of course, we have everything available for you at www.workethic.org. You can sign up for free weekly work ethic tips that'll be sent to your email inbox. You can get the definitions for all 7 of those skills so that you can clearly define and you can develop them and create awareness for yourself. You can get more additional materials. One of the things that we have available, for instance, is an online work ethic training program called Bring Your A Game Anywhere. This is an asynchronous 10 e-learning module course that helps you build those skills and leads to a certificate, the certificate of work ethic proficiency. You can take that exam, you can earn that certificate and pair it with your other academic and technical certificates and diplomas. showing employers that you are a well-rounded individual, right? That you don't just have academic and technical skills, you have soft skills as well. And that complete package will help separate you, especially in this post-COVID world. All right, so we hit on a lot of different things here this morning, a lot of different ways. But what I want to do, I gave you 5 ways. I want to give you one bonus strategy. So let's do this. I'm going to give you one bonus strategy. It's about being the change. So do me a favor. I'm going to stop my screen share here because what I want to do is take my screen. I want you all to look at me. Hopefully I can pin myself here for you. Everyone, can you all see me here on your screens? Just give me a quick yes.
Yes,
All
you're in
right.
the spotlight, sorry.
All right, you got me spotlight. All right, great. So do me a favor. Take your hand in front of your screens. If you want to turn your cameras on for this, you can. You don't have to. But just take it in front of your screen right now. Do me a favor, just like this. And wiggle your hands, wiggle your fingers, your little 5 fingers, just like this. Okay? Everybody got that? Okay. Good, good. All right. Now take your thumb and your fingers, make a little circle. Show it to the screen. Look around. All right. Look through it. Oh, okay. Good, good. Okay. We all got the circle. All right. You're showing your O because you're oh so awesome this morning. All of you are. Okay. Now do me a favor. Take that circle that's right here and put it on your chin for me. Okay. Now take a look at yourself in the camera as well as everyone else and see how many people have their hand on their cheek and not on their chin. Oh, I see some of you right now are doing this move. Right? Like I had it on my chin the whole time, Josh. I totally had it on my chin, right? Why did so many of us have our hand on our cheek instead of our chin? Because you were looking at me. At the end of the day, we can talk and we can talk. We can talk about all these things. We can talk about all the things we learned at this conference. But if we don't do anything different, it doesn't matter because people will follow what we do, not what we say. If you want to improve your work ethic, it's all great to talk about it, but you have to be the change. You have to be willing to do it. You have to take the action. And that's what I think is most important. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for your time today, your morning, and the work that you're doing. I will tell you this, STEM education is important, but diversity in STEM education is the difference. And the more diversity we have, the more it will benefit all of us because we need difference. We need different opinions. We need different backgrounds because that's what will make technology, science, engineering, and math better for the entire world. Enough of us. We need you. Thank you for this. Thank you for your commitment. Elodie, thank you for letting me be a part of this. I think we have some time here now to answer some additional questions. So I will I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Josh. Oh my God. Every time I hear your presentation is such engaging, amazing. And always I get it wrong, right?
Just for those of you who may have gotten it on your cheek instead of on your chin, I've had several people who have gone through and seen me speak multiple times and still put their hand on their cheek every time because they're still seeing me. That's how powerful our actions are. We know, but yet our brain still doesn't respond.
Ida, I'll let you, I guess, moderate the Q&A if you don't mind, please.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you, Josh. That was so informative.
Thank you.
I think we'll sort of alternate between the written questions and people can ask their questions. So let me start with something that was asked in the chat a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. How do employers judge work ethic during the interview process? And a similar question, how can we demonstrate soft skills during the interview process?
So there's a lot of different strategies, but think of this. If you think about each of the 7 A's, how could you demonstrate that during either physically or answering questions? And these are important for 2 different things. All right, so let's talk about attitude. Just basic things. Are you smiling? All right. How's your posture? I would argue this is one of the most important things. How do you treat other people? I'm sure many of you are familiar with Zappos, the shoe company. They're an online, right? They help redefine a lot of the economy as it relates to sort of buying shoes online. So Zappos is a perfect example of how you can do this. So when you're going to be an executive at Zappos, what they do is they fly you to their headquarters in Las Vegas. They have you picked up at the airport in a car. Hello. All right. They have you stay at a hotel. They drive the driver drive you every day to the headquarters. It's usually like a 2-day interview process. And then the driver drives you back to the airport. Like it's big time, right? You're thinking, hey, I'm fancy. This is a fancy company. When they make the hiring decision, you know who's in the room with them? The driver. Because the whole time they're saying, how do you react when you're not being watched? How do you behave around other people? How do you treat other people? And the same way, when you go to an interview, how do you treat the other people who are there? How do you treat a receptionist? How do you treat him or her? Right? What do you do to these different things? How do you dress? How do you hold yourself? Do you take notes? Do you ask questions? Right? Are you engaged? Do you say thank you? Right? Do you, all of these different things, do you follow back up with them? Right? These are ways that you can demonstrate your work ethic in an interview process. Don't just read off your resume, right? Your resume is the reason why you're in that room. Show them the things that you can't demonstrate on that paper. When they ask you questions, demonstrate how you use work ethic in solving your answers. That's how you can do it.
Thank you. So does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? If you could raise your hand or indicate in any. All right, I do not see any raised hands. So I will read off another question.
All right. And make it an easy one. Again, another easy question. I need those this
morning. A little easier one. All right.
I'm just kidding. Whatever it is.
I was told to take soft skills off my resume. Should I leave them on? And a related question, should we add soft skills on our LinkedIn skills section?
Okay, so I don't know who asked you to take your soft skills off your resume. I would definitely include them. But again, this isn't an either or, it's an and. I think you need to include them. And what I would do, though, if you're going to put soft skills on your resume, don't just say, I have soft skills. Again, you want to be as specific as possible, right? Number two, stop being soft. If you have specific soft skills that you think you're really good at, right, put those, enlist those with the rest of your other technical skills, right? Am I able to demonstrate, right, accountability? Yes. Am I able to demonstrate attendance? Yes. Appearance, attitude, positive attitude, those kinds of things. I think those are really powerful to put on there. But more important, you have to back them up then in your interview, right? You have to demonstrate. If you get, if you say on your resume, I bring a positive attitude to work every day, and then you show up at the interview, and you're like, right? It doesn't matter what's on the piece of paper, right? Again, your actions speak louder than anything else you can say.
Okay. So I encourage, if you have a question to ask, you can use any of the reaction emoticons to indicate that you have something to say. All right. So next question. Where does imposter syndrome fall in this assessment? And I believe this question is asked when you're describing the self-perception of work ethic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think imposter syndrome starts very early in that process where we don't have much awareness. The problem is we gain more awareness, we're actually getting better, but we don't feel that we are, right? Because we realize how big the gap is, right? And so the idea, right, the problem that comes in is we have this sense then, like, I'm just not very good at this. I'm still not very good at this. I'm still, right? And we have that self-doubt that creeps in, and we think that we're not good enough. And I will tell you, right, we're oftentimes told we're not good enough. And we reinforce that message internally. What you need to realize is that actually, as you get into that Dunning-Kruger effect, right, where your knowledge and your awareness grows, you're actually getting better at the skill, even though you feel like you're not. And I think that's important to remember. And you have to, again, develop that intrinsic motivation about why it's important, because intrinsic motivation will help you overcome your own imposter effect, because that's just something we internalize. And if we can internalize our motivation, we can internalize then we can overcome that internalized self-doubt.
Okay. How can one maintain a good work ethic if the working environment is toxic? Some may choose to find another job, while others may try to be an agent of change. What are your recommendations?
I saw this question earlier, and it's a really powerful one, because there is no right answer, because it kind of depends on the organization itself, right? Because the reality is, we'd like to all be change agents, but not every organization will accept change from an agent. It may not be possible. And so you're spinning and you're using a lot of energy in order to accomplish something that's not possible. I think this, again, we were joking around earlier about demonstrating soft skills in the interview. I think one of the important things we have to do in an interview is determine how much soft skills are supported by the organization. How well do they demonstrate these, right? How much can we find out about this environment, right? And the sad part is, in much the same way people will hire someone with great technical skills who has no soft skills, and then is surprised when they're a jerk. We oftentimes hear stories about organizations where they burn everybody out, and it's like, oh, it's a dog eat dog kind of environment, but man, you just really got to work for Google. And we're like, I'm going to do it anyhow. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to be different. And then like 2 years later, we're like, what did I do? Why did I do this? I feel so miserable. This place is awful, right? I'm not saying Google is, but I'm just saying these organizations, we know they're toxic when we go in and we think we can somehow change them or that it's not important. It is. We have to just remember that when we go into our interview is part of that process. And so I would say most of the time, I would be looking for that early on in the process, and I would try and find somewhere that is less toxic because it just will suck the life out of you.
Okay. As it is important to have a great work ethic, it is equally great to have a hobby that allows you to relax and enjoy yourself. Do you agree with this statement? Please explain.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, I think that's part of the misconception people have about work ethic is that work ethic is, I need to spend 80 hours a week working. That's what it's all about. It's about just how much face time I put in. I have to keep working on this project. I have to do this. I have to do that. No, work ethic is about all 7 of these skills, and none of them is about burnout. And I think we need to find ways to recharge, and whether or not that's a hobby, whether or not that's exercise, whether or not that's friends, whatever it is, I think that's critically important in there because if we don't find ways to recharge ourselves, your battery will empty. It doesn't matter really how good or how strong you think you are. We need those things. And you can't have good work ethic if you're burnt out. Just, it doesn't work.
All right. How do you get employers to notice and appreciate your work ethic?
By demonstrating it. I will be honest with you. It is, once people realize it, it is amazing when, whether it's things just like having a friendly attitude or being willing to pitch in, right? Employers notice when people are willing to help out, or, right, they have suggestions about how to, make things better, right? Those things get noticed, especially in a perception with younger workers, right? Where you're lazy, you're entitled, you don't want to do anything, you don't want to work hard. And then you bust that and you blow that myth wide open. People are going to be like, holy cow, I had no idea, right? The expectation is so low that it makes it easier, I think. So make sure you just demonstrate it, you do it consistently. And again, it's not about working 80 hours. It's about the 7 skills. How do you demonstrate all of them?
Okay. Do you think it's okay to lack work experience and still land your dream job?
Yes. Let's face it, all of us at one point had to lack work experience, right? I find that employers more and more are looking for, again, how you've demonstrated things in the past, whether or not that's technical skills, academic skills, and fewer people are working. And so they're getting less and less work experience. But what I'm going to tell you is how do you supplement what you're doing to overcome that work experience? Have you done volunteer work that you could use in lieu of that? Have you done group projects that will help demonstrate that you've been able to use these same skills, right? Whatever it is, what is it that they're looking for in work experience? That's going to be the question you want to know. And then fill that in with where you can and where you've developed that experience. Maybe it was a work study. Maybe it was just a group project that you did. Maybe it was something you did for your parents growing up at home. Or, hey, I spent a summer with my grandparents and I had to help them do blank, 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 blank. Those things are important, but it doesn't have to be work experience anymore.
Okay. Is there a bias towards people on the introverted side when it comes to work ethic?
I don't think there needs to be. I mean, when you look at those 7 skills, a lot of them are personal skills. It's just about how you choose to behave, what you choose to do with yourself. There are some that are about how you interact with other people. But I will tell you what, acceptance and appreciation in particular are not bound one way or another to introverted or extroverted people. In fact, I think extroverted people do a much worse job of showing appreciation than introverted people do. Why? Because extroverted people tend to be all out there and they're doing it and they're about this, whereas introverted people tend to realize how things impact people more. So I think it's really important for us to consider that you don't have to be extroverted to show work ethic. What you do is you just have to find your own way that works for you to be able to, again, demonstrate the skills, right? How does an introverted person show that they're taking control of their emotions instead of letting their emotions control them? It's the same way that an extroverted person would.
A reminder, if you have a question you want to ask, you can just indicate with any of the emoticons. I will call on you. Can we have low confidence in our abilities in a field, but still know we have great soft skills that were built separately from our degree? And how do we demonstrate them?
I think that's really the key, is how do you quantify that you develop those skills? And I think that question is that you need to answer both for yourself and then be able to answer in an interview. If you think of behavioral interviewing is a great way. Not everyone uses that approach, but it's a great way to help demonstrate the skills. Think of the STAR approach. What's the situation? What's the tactic that you used? Right? What action did you do, and what was the result? If you can talk about things in that way for your soft skills. Hey, here's a great example of a time when I had to deal with some people that I didn't really like, but I had to respect. Blah 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 blah. Here's how we had a policy at the school that you couldn't do blank, and I really thought it was a stupid one, but I knew that it was important that we had to do it. And here's how I dealt with that situation. And even though I didn't like the rule, I followed it, and we were able to achieve things differently and actually had great success. Tell stories like that. Those are ways that you can then show that without having to necessarily, have a degree or, though I will put this plug in, another great way to demonstrate that you have the soft skills is to earn your certificate of work ethic proficiency, available through the Center for Work Ethic Development, a national organization committed to helping people reach their full potential. Okay. Next question.
Which brings us very neatly to the next question. How do we take your class?
That's a really great question. I'm weird that came up next. So I'm not exactly sure how we're doing it through this, but if you want to go to the website at workethic.org, you have an opportunity there to look at it. I know one of the things we were looking at doing through this program potentially was to figure out some ways to get some seat licenses for people if they were interested. And I don't know exactly, we're going to have to figure out how that all works with some grant funding and some other stuff, but there are lots of different ways, but you can find out more about it at workethic.org, or if you want to go straight into the program, if you go to bringyour-agame.com, you can also find out. You can get there from the work ethic site too, but those are different ways. And again, it's a entirely online e-course with, and it's asynchronous, so you can kind of log in anytime, anywhere.
And if I can add, as Josh mentioned, we purchase licenses. So again, you have a poll. I know some of you are still in the app. There will be a poll for that session that asks you if you're interested in actually completing that certification. It's not anonymous, so actually we'll get your name when you respond for that specific poll. So please answer that one. It will tell you yes, no, maybe you already have the certification. I know a few MD students already have the certification because I already delivered that in some of my classes. But again, take the poll and we'll follow up with you for the license, for the free voucher.
Thank you, Elodie. How do you think empathy plays within the idea of work ethic?
I think empathy is a critical skill. When you look at, when I look at the paradigm of soft skills, I look at it as sort of different tiers. And when we look at work ethic is that really the ground rock, that thing that everything's based on. And then you develop more soft skills on top of that. And I think that next level of soft skills is around communication and more teamwork and those. But at the top of that is around empathy and EQ. And I think that really becomes, when you have those skills, that really defines, people who are at their utmost when it comes to success, because those top level skills help you do what you do way better. But you have to have those foundational skills in order to get to the point where you can build up that empathy in the other piece, right? If we don't show appreciation for people, it's difficult to have empathy. If we don't hold ourselves accountable, it's difficult to have empathy for other people who are then unaccountable or accountable. So start with those skills, but I think empathy is critically important as we talk about that balance of those technical, academic, and soft skills.
Okay. So a couple more questions. Do you have any book recommendations?
Oh, for what? I'll tell you what I'm reading right now as I grab it off my desk. I don't know if you can see it. I'll put it up here. No, you can't see it. It just looks white. It's called Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, PhD. It's about how you change your life, not by creating, and again, it kind of feeds into the 1% approach. But the idea is that if you want to create change in your life, it starts with little small habits that you develop every single day or stop doing. And it's all about how to make them work better. And part of that is, small when how the behavior is prompted, what you look at when it comes to that, when what the behavior is, what the reward is when you get it done. It's a very interesting look at the psychology behind why we do things. It's my new thing. So that's my favorite one right now. If you just want a book.
A couple more.
Okay. Oh, more books?
Yes.
Oh, okay, more books. Let's see. Another one that, it goes back a little ways, but again, I think Jim Collins' Good to Great is a classic. And by classic, I mean like written 10 years ago, but a classic book around organizational, what happens to make organizations great, but it can be very applied personally as well. And I think that is such a great thing to keep in mind. I love the different strategies in that book. If you've read it, probably my favorite idea is this idea of the hedgehog concept. And that rather than trying to be everything to all people, you focus on what you're really good at and you stay the course. And I think that's so important because so often in life we try and pretend that we're going to do this or we bend to that, blah, 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 and we lose sight of what makes us great and really, focusing on that. And then I would say I'm looking here at my bookshelf, which is right over here. Let's see, other great ones. Let's see. Back from my other day, I don't know if you'd like it, but it's called Customer Satisfaction is Worthless. But it's all about how we have to create more loyalty rather than just satisfaction. If all we're doing is making people satisfied, they can get satisfaction anywhere. In today's world, what we have to do is we have to really kind of create raving fans. We have to go above and beyond. And I think that applies at work, that applies in relationships, that applies in everything that we do. So a couple of different options for you there to be looking at just in terms of things that I've read or am currently reading. I'm a fan. Oh, actually, there's another one. Hold on. Can't believe I couldn't remember this one. Boom, Making Hope Happen. It's all around the psychology of hope. And I'm actually using it. I'm in the process of writing a book right now called Hope is a Strategy, around how you can use hope to help drive strategic, personal, and organizational change. All right.
All right.
I had a
Maria.
question.
Yes,
Oh.
please.
So I'm a parent. I was wondering how like punctuality or attendance, like as a parent, maybe having to miss work, how badly does that affect the way employers see our work ethic?
There are two things I think that are kind of the most important for employers. The first is showing up. I'm going to be honest with you. Attendance is probably the number one thing I hear from employers around the country. That's a problem for them when it relates to employees. Getting people to show up on time, work full shift, be there, because they're counting on them to do that. And so that's going to be number one. Number two that feeds into that is around trust. And kind of accountability that people are going to do what they say they're going to do. They're not lying to you. Because once you've broken that bond as an employer, it is virtually impossible to get it back. And so I would say this: if you do what you can do to help your kids be where they need to be, and if they can't make a commitment, try not to make it in the first place. And I will be honest with you again, as an uncle and not a parent myself, but I will tell you this. This is a perfect example of where we put our hands sometimes where we say it shouldn't be. Right? We're like, oh, we should always do this. We should always do that. And then they watch you, fake that you're sick so you don't have to go to dinner with friends or whatever else. And oh my God, we can't go to grandma's house because we got a flat tire or whatever, right? So just make sure that you're modeling that behavior as well, because I think that's really, really important as it relates to this.
Thank you.
Not that you aren't already.
Right. Well, my kids are really young, so I think
Okay.
my biggest concern is mostly like if they're sick, and they do have like health issues. So I always feel like I'm kind of always on like a back burner because sometimes I can't commit to things. So it really sucks because I do feel like, other than that, like my work ethic is great. So yeah, I was just
well,
wondering.
We're all better at some of these than others, right? Some of us are great at one and mediocre at others. We all kind of in a continuum there. I think the key, if you look at attendance, and you can kind of go in and break that down, if we can stop overcommitting, that's a great way to keep from having attendance problems. And I know you're already kind of working on some of those kinds of things, but what else can you do in order to show that you're reliable? Because at the end of the day, attendance is about reliability. People want to know that they can count on you. What are some other ways maybe that you could show them that they can count on you without having to make a commitment to physically be somewhere?
Okay. And do you think that that could change now that we're kind of in this more virtual environment?
I think people are far more accepting of that than they once were. As long as that, again, as long as you make that commitment or the understanding of that commitment up front. Like, hey, I can do this remotely, or I can do this from, so, I don't have to physically be there. As long as you say that up front and that's the expectation, then I think people are going to be more willing, as a result of what's happened in the pandemic, to realize that people can be functioning when they're not physically somewhere. But you have to make that commitment up front, right? So that people, it's not like a surprise that you didn't show up and you got it done. Hey, I need to do this from my home because my kid's sick. Okay,
Right.
great. Let's do that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So another question from Wilnesia. I hope I'm saying that right.
You can unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, so my question is, how do we gauge how much work ethic the company have during the interview process, besides just asking the interviewer questions? Is there any behaviors to look out for to assist us?
So I would, again, in the same way that you can, they have lots of people judging you, I would do the same thing with them. And this is possibly involving asking people other than the person who's interviewing you some questions. If you do have somebody at the front desk, is you're just kind of there, how do you like working here? What's your favorite part? What's your least favorite part? Sometimes you can find out information on a place like Glassdoor or other of these sort of behind the scenes where they get feedback from employees. Now, I would take anything at Glassdoor with a grain of salt. Typically, much like reviews, you tend to get the extremes, people who love it or hate it. And oftentimes only people who write reviews are people who hate it. So just kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, find people, maybe who have worked there. If you have folks in an extended network, I saw somebody who wrote down that custodians are great people who can tell you a lot about what happens in an organization, whether or not that's a school or a business, because they see a lot of things, right? Yeah. How do you judge people on how they treat people? And that's a good rule of thumb, right? If you can see how they treat the receptionist, how they treat other folks in the hallways, as you go through kind of how do people relate to each other, I think that gives you a good indication of of the culture of an organization.
Okay, and final question, you discussed it during your talk, but it's so important. So how does one improve their work ethic skills?
Oh, well, I gave you 5 different ways that you can improve your work ethic skills. So let's just review them real quick. Number 1, you have to know why it matters to you. You're not going to improve your work ethic because it matters to other people. What's in it for me? Why should you care? And I'll tell you one of the reasons you should care is because I don't care how good you are academically. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how good your technical skills are. Without that third element, you're not going to reach your full potential. So you have to internalize that. You have to figure out what that means to you. Number 2, stop being soft. What does that mean? Don't just kind of treat these things as if they don't have definitions. They don't have the same level of detail that every other skill has. Clearly define them, then you can develop them. That's when you demonstrate them. Third thing, create that awareness. Figure out what those definitions are. Find some way to figure out, maybe from other people, how well you demonstrate them. Because you may, again, the less you know, the more confident you are. All right, we got to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. Fourth thing, build those connections, find context, figure out how these skills play into your other skills in your day-to-day life so that they're not operating in this separate paradigm. They're together with what you do. And then make sure that you try the 1% approach. Don't try and be superhuman tomorrow. Small incremental change over time. And our bonus strategy for building work ethic, simplest thing, be the change. Stop talking, start doing.
Thank you, Josh. Yes. Yes.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much,
You are
Josh.
so
All right.
very welcome. Thank you all very much for your time this morning, for your commitment here. I love the fact, if we talk about work ethic, you had me do this on a Saturday morning. I love it. That's what it's about, right? It's about commitment to you. It's about being true to help people out and do what you want to do. And work ethic means that, right? Doesn't mean you're here all day. Doesn't mean you're here all night. It means that you're doing the 7 things that employers are looking for. And having a great attitude is a key piece. Thank you all very much. Keep that great attitude. Stay strong, stay healthy, stay positive. Those 3 things will get you through everything.